welcome to episode 18 of the Huddy Hui, and we are here in Palmerston North, Adam, and what are we standing in front of for this episode today?
This is Charles Munro, the founder of New Zealand Rugby, a statue acknowledging his fine achievement in New Zealand society. Born in 1851, he imported rugby to New Zealand. In 1870, they played the first game between Nelson College and Nelson Club at the Botanic Gardens on the 14th of May, and it was won by the Nelson Club 2-0. And then Munro relocated to Palmerston North, hence why the statue is here. He had 5 children, his 3 sons were doctors, and his father was a Speaker of the House. When you're in Pyro, you go and see the L&P bottle. When you're in Auckland, you go and see the Sky Tower. When you're in Palmerston North, you come and visit Charles Munro, the founder of modern rugby.
And this is the Mount Rushmore of New Zealand Rugby, and as well as us visiting New Zealand Rugby Museum today, and also looking at a very important exhibition that Adam's going to talk about later on, our guest tonight is Fui in the Hui, the Old Boys legend prop from Old Boys University, Jonathan Fuimaono. Enjoy. Our guest tonight is OBU legend and captain of the Fighting Billy Goats, Jonathan Fuimaono. Of course, has been involved in 4 Jubilee Cup wins. And of course, the Billy Goats got off to a fantastic start, beating Norths 18 points to 0 in what was quite a torrid affair. So, Fui, that was a tough game in the weekend. And how are you feeling after that game? Because you went off during the second half.
Yeah, well, I thought I was going to come off earlier. It was around 75 minutes I came off. So I lay down on the sideline and then I struggled to get up. So I guess that's the measure of it. But I'm pretty much pre-booked in with the physio on Mondays these days, with follow-ups on Wednesdays, and normally come right by Thursday. So yeah, it was a real physical battle on the weekend with our mates from Norths.
You've become adept at the warm down, I understand.
Yeah, well, I was a bit late because I actually have to warm down after trainings these days. It takes me about half an hour to warm up before games too. So if you're at our game early, normally you'll see me trudging out there a little bit early just to get some stretches in.
Warming up for Norths is pretty difficult because they're a very fine side. You held them to 0. Now, that's very significant. How do you think the guys achieved that?
Yeah, it's like some real tenacity shown on defence, and like that competitive edge, people fighting over tackles pretty much. So it's awesome that we have that sort of attitude when the accuracy is not there. The energy levels and the intent is definitely there on the defensive end. So that was awesome, especially seeing as we dropped the ball so many times. We did end up having to defend quite a lot.
Did you expect Norths to hit you even harder than what they did in the Jubilee Cup final last year? And how different were the 2 games?
I think if you look at the differences between the teams, they've obviously had some massive losses this year with some real key positions and key players. But with that being said, Norths are always a team that are going to fight. They're never going to leave a stone unturned. So we expected that it was going to be a physical battle. Obviously, there were chances out there that we left, heaps of points that, could have been scored. But, whether that was our mistakes or the pressure that they were putting on us, it's sort of hard to tell. But we knew that they were going to bring it to us, and they did. And that they're with the new players that they have, they'll be building, and then you wouldn't want to be facing a North team at the end of the season, that's for sure.
And of course, the Billy Goats lost a few players in the off-season too, Fui, but you've also gained some players as well. You've got some young talent coming through the ranks as well. 2 young lads made their debuts in the weekend. And what's been key to OBU's success has sort of been not only your OBU Academy, but your relationship with the university. And tell us about the assets they put in place to bring these guys down into the OBU program.
Yeah, so obviously a few years back, we underwent a bit of a change. We needed to change the culture of the club, where we would have fun on and off the field, but a bit more towards the off the field stuff. As you said, the Garden Gnome partying up until last weekend, like that was the times of old. Old Sam Reed works hard all year round these days. So, but yeah, there's been a lot of work done in the background, changing those ideas and that drinking culture, and bringing a bit more professionalism into our setup. And the academy that has been set up is, well run by people that are respected, like Tomasi and Robbie. And they just build really good relationships through there, have good coaching, there's good advice given, support networks, where there aren't really support networks in other clubs. So just building that infrastructure, I guess, and getting them into that professional style environment, so that they can, have that platform to get to the next level. So it's quite exciting to see how far the club has come over the last 10 or so years.
How was that change for you? Because that change happened about halfway through your Old Boys University career, and you were a younger player becoming more mature when the culture started to change, and now you're very much a leader. It must have been fascinating to watch the transition from the beginning to now.
Yeah, I guess in the past, like I had the ambition of becoming professional, but nowadays it's awesome actually just being part of the environment, which makes these players become professionals and realize their dreams, and where you could be like a shoulder to lean on, or just someone to catch up with, or someone who can go over the rugby content with them. Those sort of things are quite rewarding for people like me, who I still love playing the game and feel like I have that ability to give back to these fellas and just help them develop. So yeah, it has changed a lot. I guess I was there through both phases, and I enjoyed both phases. So it's probably good that I started in that first phase young and have just matured into becoming more of a mentor and a support person, I guess.
Let's go back to your college days, Fui. You're a product of St. Pat's Town. Tell us about your time at St. Pat's. Who are some of your key influences there? And I believe when you were playing rugby at St. Pat's Town, you played at number 8.
Yeah, so I played under 15s for the first 3 years at school. And I was a number 8 back then. And there was a fella who was coaching the under 16s for Wellington at the time, who's like, oh, imagine if you had a prop who played like a number 8. So I ended up moving to prop in sixth form. It was a tough transition, I guess, and I didn't really get the hang of it until I left school. But yeah, I only played a couple games with the first 15. I got injured in 7th form in the preseason, and I think my first game was actually against Wellington College when I was 6th form, and I came off the bench and we lost like 77-0 or something. And then yeah, the following year I played 1 or 2 games. So my first 15 career wasn't really as exciting as some of the fellas who are coming through at the moment. But yeah, just kept at it. There were some pretty cool guys playing when I was at school. Pati Ngaulofa from Tawa was a key one for me. He was just as hard and big at school. And he, that he always gave it everything. Also, other guys that I played with, Puasa is still playing from Ori's, and Tui Tuia, Isaiah Patello, those fellas, Ryan Stefano, all guys that I was playing with rugby through school with. So it's cool actually to see them play. Be nice if we're on the same team. I definitely don't like running into Isaiah Patello because he just chops me every time. But yeah, some real quality players came out of that those couple of years.
And on the subject of quality players, who are the best guys you've played with at OBU? And tell us a Fetu Henry story.
Oh, don't think we have enough time for Fetu Henry stories. The man has got a lot of stories behind him. Yeah, some couple of legends from OBU that I've played with over the years. It's a good question. Probably one of my favourites is Finbar Kernil. Played a bit of. Well, we ended up playing in the reserves for a bit when I came back from overseas, and sort of that 2011 onwards, we decided, let's give it a crack and actually play some Prem rugby. And we were pretty much bandit brothers, like all the way through. The 1-2, the 1-2 combo, pretty much. That OBU front row. So it was cool to have him all the way through until last year, pretty much. I don't know if he'll make any cameo appearances this year, but the year's young, so we'll see. There's so many.
With
probably the
Finbar.
acid man, Adam Hill was another one that I really enjoyed playing with. He's probably the hardest man I've ever met. So he just had no regard for his body and just put everything on the line for the boys. So he's also quite memorable for me.
With Finbar Kernil, he spent 2018 in the Netherlands, and there was a bloke called the Dutchie replaced him, Alex Bardengood, and he won the Jim Brown Memorial Medal in the Jubilee Cup final. How was that for you as a prop, that 2018 final against Northam? What was the response of Finn on the other side of the world?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I'm pretty sure he was drunk. So he probably had a real good time. But that was awesome for Dutchie. We've been really lucky with the props that we've had over the years, and we've been able to work really hard on our scrummaging and whatnot to build the pack that we've had. So yeah, it's pretty much been that myself, Dutchie, Finbar, and Morgie Poi. But yeah, I guess that era's coming to an end, and it's time to start bringing through the young fellas.
How's the role of prop changed in senior rugby? Because in professional rugby, the props are quite dazzling at times now.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say that I've got a real X factor, and I don't think I'm as fast as a lot of these new fellas. Definitely not as fit, but yeah, it's pretty exciting the way that props play these days. Seeing backs getting stepped by front rowers is always quite pleasing. And it's quite nice when you see them get runaways, like, your Fidos and your Numias. They're just unreal athletes. But it really depends on the team. Like, it depends on what structures you're playing. For us, it sort of suits having a heavier tight head. We anchor our scrum quite well off that. And we're lucky that we have guys like Luke Chisholm, extremely mobile, can hit rucks that I'm not going to get to, which is quite a lot. Him and Morgan Poi, these other fellas are quite dynamic, so it's quite nice having that balance in our team at the moment.
Of the Jubilee Cup wins you've been involved with, Hui, which is your most famous one, and tell us why?
Oh, that's a tough one. They've all been pretty special in different ways. Like 2015 was, we scraped through that Swindale on a technicality, and then we went undefeated. Where no one thought that we would, we had a lot of tough, tight games to close that season out. And, there were a lot of real battlers over the years who had played through the tough years that we'd had, the 2009s, 10s sort of thing, even before that, languishing in the Hardham Cup for a few seasons. So it was really nice reward for that, to get that for these guys who'd put in so much work for the club. So I'd probably say 2015 was the most special one. But yeah, the other ones obviously have been special in their own way. Different groups of players, it's always different feeling, different environment. Last year when we won just the feeling in that shed was just second to none. Like, I had never been in a shed that was so pumped up. 2018 was sort of where everyone expected for us to, expected big things from us, and we managed to deliver it at the end of the year, but didn't quite get it in this window. We've faced different adversities in different years, so it's been a bit of, it's a little bit different for each one.
There's a common man in all the Jubilee Cup successes, though. He doesn't get on the field, but Patches Houlihan really is one of the iconic figures now of Wellington Rugby, very selfless contributor. Tell us what Patches means to OBU and what makes him such a unique part of your club's fabric.
Patches, he's just a great guy. If you ever need to get a load off, or have any issues, or he's your go-to guy, and he's always got a genuine interest in people's lives, and he'll come up to you and he'll remember conversations you had like 5 years ago about something random. Just little things like that. It's just that like little touch of class, and he's just actually a top dude. And he'd give you the shirt off his back if he had to. So yeah, got a lot of time for old Patchy.
And Phil, you've represented Wairarapa Bush, the Wellington Māori, and Wellington B for a number of years. Do you feel that you had an opportunity at one stage to make the Wellington Lions at any chance in your career?
Yeah, I've thought about this a bit. Probably. But if I was a realist, like, it was there, but I probably didn't work hard enough for it. So it's quite nice being in my position now, seeing so many guys who are keen for it, and they just put endless hours of work into it, and they deserve everything they get, And so when I look back on opportunities like that, I'm just like, it could have been if I wanted it more. But even now, like, I've got my family and my wife and my kids, and for me, that's like, I've cracked it. So, and then living through, I guess, the success of the teammates on a rugby side, like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've been successful in my own right without having to become a professional rugby player, and makes me quite proud of those achievements as opposed to making it to that next level. I don't reckon there's any what ifs, like, I've given it a good crack. So yeah, no regrets.
Do you think some of the younger players coming through, though, are losing sight of what it means to be successful in rugby? Here you are, still playing at 32 with 4 Jubilee Cup successes, a lifetime of tales and friends. And I heard in the Manawatu 3 weeks ago that 2 18-year-old kids were put in cotton wool by the Manawatu Turbos Academy. They haven't even played a senior game yet.
Yeah, it's a bit of a hard one. The landscape has changed a lot. I talk to the lads sometimes about when I first come into a circle at rugby, and I got told, I think I said something like as a suggestion, and I just got, hey, you got to earn your voice in here. Whereas nowadays, these kids come out of school and they're professional rugby players. So it's just so different. The school game going professional, I truly believe it's hurting the club game. It's sort of that elitist. It's going a bit elitist at the schools where, players who get told that they're not going to crack it might decide not to play rugby for fun. They'll go and do something else, So there's definitely an underlying issue where we just need to try and get those attendance numbers back up and people playing rugby for the love of the game. And, I guess we'll just wait and see what happens over the next few years.
Well, Fui, it's been fantastic having you on the Huddy Hui tonight. Thank you for telling us about your rugby career. And all the best against Huddle Boys Marist on Saturday. That should be a thrilling game.
Yep, should be a cracker.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers, lads.
Well, what a fantastic interview with Old Boys champion prop Jonathan Fuimaono. We're here at the New Zealand Rugby Museum. And Adam, who have we got standing here with us?
Stephen Berg is the curator of the Rugby Museum directly behind us. Stephen's been in this role for a dozen years. Explain how you became involved with the Rugby Museum.
Yeah, well, thanks, Adam. Firstly, it's a pleasure to be on the show. So I got involved in the Rugby Museum just simply by walking in the door one day and saying I saw an ad in the paper, and it was for a 6-month role. 12 years later, I'm still here.
And what was that role 12 years ago?
Well, it was part-time, but it was essentially as director of the museum. But once money started to pour in before Rugby World Cup 2011 and the redevelopment, it became a full-time job managing the new development.
Guide us through that transition of the museum from its old site to this very flash contemporary building behind us.
Yeah, so that was a massive undertaking, took a couple of years, and it was a lot of planning and detail that went in. So we had to move 40,000 objects, we had to build all new display cabinets, we had to tell all new stories. So, every facet was looked at. We spent $100,000 in conservation of items alone.
Your background in rugby, what triggered this interest in the first place?
Well, I guess I grew up going to Athletic Park and watching games. I'm fortunate to have watched a lot of games over the years, and Dad was a big fan, and he'd drag us along as teenage boys to most of the games. And I thought it was normal. People would say, "You're rugby tragic," and I'd say, "No, that's just normal, But people would say to me later, after I became the curator, they'd say, "Oh, we always knew you loved your rugby." So, yeah, somehow or other it just sort of turned out that way, really.
And when you say curator, what exactly does that mean? There's a lot of old components to this museum, and then there's contemporary components as well, where kids are smashing into tackle bags. What's the biggest challenge in trying to pull together the rugby tragic side with the kids?
Yeah, well, that's actually a really good point, Adam. Actually, if we cater just to the rugby tragics, there's probably only 3 of us, you, Brad and me. So we need to cater to the general public. I know what I would want in a museum, but I can't cater for me. I need to cater for the general public. A lot of kids today don't play rugby and maybe don't have experience of even kicking ball over a goalpost and those sorts of things. So, we have to tell people what the rules of rugby are, who the All Blacks are, who the Black Ferns are, all the way through, bring them with the journey of how New Zealanders got in behind the All Blacks and how rugby became and continues to be our number one sport.
What's your favourite artefact or the most interesting artefact in this museum?
Well, we have 15 rare items actually, Adam, but everybody loves to see the 1905 All Blacks jersey, which is just incredible. 115 years old. Just links you straight back to that incredible tour that those guys went on over a number of months and their success. But the fact that we have one in the museum, the iconic look of it, the fern, the embroidery on it, the whole package, it's just a really special object.
And what's in the future for this rugby museum? I understand tomorrow there's a big launch, but also looking beyond tomorrow, where does a rugby museum see itself in a decade's time?
Yeah, well, a number of years ago, we thought, we need to be the New Zealand Rugby Museum. That's in our name. We need to be the national museum. We need to be delivering exhibitions that are national. So we did a Balls, Bullets and Boots World War I exhibition a few years ago, and we're following it up now with this is the first time that anybody's done anything on the Black Ferns or on women's rugby in particular. No exhibitions happen on women's rugby. Very few have even happened on women's sport. There's no books to turn to learn about women's rugby. So everything's been made by a group of professionals, including yourself, Adam, going around interviewing women. Catherine here, who's been amazing, digging into stuff that, you know, no one's really looked at closely before. It's there, it's just turning it all into a coherent story, that interesting story, and the objects to back it up. So that's part one of your question. Where to from here? We're going to continue to deliver exhibitions that will tour around New Zealand and give those stories about rugby. One of the key things we think is to take that internationally. We really want to take that story to France in 2023 and have a New Zealand exhibition floating around France so that European locals can learn about rugby, and particularly New Zealand rugby.
Preserving history and creating history. The Rugby Museum curator Stephen Berg, a pleasure to have you on the program, and all the best with your future endeavours.